Tihe mauri ora, itamana whenua tinakwe, tilinita tinakwe. Your Worship, Andy Foster, Mayor of Wellington, welcome. It's lovely to have you here. Members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Dean Liazi Scanlon, High Commissioners, Ambassadors, diplomatic colleagues, friends and whānau, no mai, haere mai, kiti mahana America Aotearoa, New Zealand. I have a confession to make. I don't like talking about climate change. Honestly, it depresses me. Even reading about it, even thinking about it. Thinking about the destruction of habitats, the extinction of species, the extreme weather events we've all lived through and our families are suffering through. It hurts. It's happening. And it's depressing to realize that it is caused by humans. We are causing this change, which is threatening our lives and our livelihoods and our families. And so instead of giving the brilliant policy speech that my colleague Alison has written for me, which we will post on our website, I want to tell you some stories. I want to tell you some stories about my climate heroes, because I needed a lift. You know, this was a tough month for the United States after our withdrawal from Afghanistan and the terrorist attack that happened at the airport in Kabul, after marking the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, after living through 2,000 deaths a day because of COVID-19. After and still managing the fallout from what I think is a very positive and constructive agreement, the AUKUS agreement, that still is a diplomatic situation we're managing. And after witnessing and watching the extreme weather events play out in the United States, the heat dome in the Pacific Northwest, where temperatures are 40 degrees Celsius, it's unheard of. Flooding in New York City at a meter of water coming through Manhattan. Hurricane Ida sweeping through, more devastating than Hurricane Katrina. 100-year storms happening year after year. It's been a tough month. And so I want to tell some uplifting stories that have given me hope. Before I do, a word from my sponsor. I think the president's doing a pretty good job. And I just want to list a couple of the things that give me, as a representative of the United States government, some hope. Because policy does matter, words do matter, and political leadership does matter. And since he's taken office, the president has appointed John Kerry, his close friend, to be a leader, an outspoken, dynamic, globe-trotting leader for climate change as the special representative, special presidential envoy for climate change. He has hosted a climate summit with world leaders. We have rejoined the Paris Agreement. We've elevated our NDCs to 50% emissions reductions by 2030. And we've committed to a net zero greenhouse gas emissions target by 2050. And as Laura mentioned, we have called for $100 billion commitment among developed countries to mitigate the effects of climate change in developing countries. And that is also happening. And we are responding at the leaders level, and we'll continue to do so. But what really resonated with me, and what I want to share with you, are some stories about everyday people who are climate heroes. And since we have had a difficult week with the French and the Canadians, let me start with a French-Canadian. This is a story about Benoit Lavigueur, who is a builder of eco-house dreams. Benoit grew up in Quebec as a farmer's child, living in a farmhouse, and was trained as a carpenter. He became interested in ecological construction, sort of green construction. And he began to consider, what does an eco-house look like? And he imagined what it would look like. And so he built one. And he built it so that it was transparent, so that you could see the innovations built into the house. And it was an open house you could walk through and observe how this house reduced water consumption by 90% and how it reduced heating demand by 75%. And he opened his house to the neighborhood and he inspired others. And as a result of that, he founded a company and now employs 14 people. And the company has called Belvedere has built 50 of these ecologically friendly homes across Canada. And that's a model that he has adopted and has enjoyed and is inspiring others in a very simple, fundamental way to make a very real, tangible change and have an impact. Another climate hero I want to introduce you to is Isatou Ceesay, who is from the Gambia. Now, in her hometown, there were no regular rubbish collections. So trash would pile up in the streets, and it would wash up on the shores. And when the shoppers switched to plastic bags, of course, plastic bags were buried in the soil, and they were killing wildlife. They also were being burned as fuel for cooking, releasing toxic fumes. So Isatou became a volunteer with the US Peace Corps and learned about how to recycle waste, the possibilities of recycling. And she began to upcycle these plastic bags and turned them into purses. It took 8 hours to make one purse, and it used about 10 plastic bags. But with her friends and colleagues, she began to make these plastic bags and to market them and to create a stream of income for her village. And they've turned it into making shoulder bags and cosmetic purses. And now there are 50 women working in this community recycling project. They've got their own bank account. There's a microfinancing initiative backing it. There's a community garden now that's growing vegetables. And in a return to the Peace Corps, she was able to secure funding to build a job center, a skills center. This recycling project now has expanded to include compost for vegetable plots, using scrap metal, turning bike tires into jewelry, and crafting bags from old rice sacks. It's gotten to the point where this village recycling center is now collecting rubbish from neighboring villages and sharing their knowledge with others about plastic upcycling. Now Isatou has trained 11,000 people in the Gambia how to recycle, how to upcycle, how to market these products. And in an incredibly, again, inspiring policy decision, the Gambia government has banned the import and use of plastic bags. Isatou's dream now is to run for political office. And that's just one story of one person in one village that shows the power of change at that level. Let me bring it closer to home with a story from South Auckland. I was reading about Jerome Wenslick, who is a founder of a company called Future Post. Well, a few years ago, he was a farmer, and a few years ago, he was building a security fence around a South Auckland site, and he was frustrated by the number of wooden posts that were being broken in the process. And as he's digging around trying to extract these broken wooden posts, he's finding old plastic and rubbish in the soil. And so he realized that, look, I've got these wooden posts that are breaking, and I see all this plastic that's rubbish. He realized that he could melt the plastic to create a substitute material for these fence posts, and founded a company, Future Posts. Today, Future Post processes over 10 tons of plastic a day, and plans are afoot to double that. These posts are as strong as wood, and they're not affected by exposure, they're immune to moisture, they're a bit flexible, and they will last forever. So this is one formula of one example where Jerome Wenslick in South Auckland has created a company that is now actually, businesses are paying Future Post to take their soft plastics, to turn it into this product. And again, he's scaling it up, he's marketing this product, it's going nationwide. And you can find in New World and Pack and Save and Countdown soft plastic recycling bins that are collection sites for this material that is going to be turned into these posts. And finally, again, bringing it even closer to home. A story about one of our climate heroes right here in our own mission. Chris Pritchett, who is here. Chris, stand up, raise your hand. I didn't tell him I was going to call him out, but there you go. Leads our green team and is part of our conservation effort. And Chris has been instrumental in working with the National Wildlife Federation on the conservation of pollinators, native plants, and wildlife at our mission here in New Zealand. And what we're about to achieve is a rarity. We're about to have several of our properties certified as wildlife habitats. Now, there are a number of requirements that we have to meet, a number of categories that cover eco-friendly practices, native plant cultivation, the encouragement of native pollinators and insects, and wildlife-friendly landscape that provides food and cover and places to raise the young and water sources. Out of 200 diplomatic posts that the U.S. government has worldwide, only 25 are certified by the National Wildlife Federation. Once we finish this certification, which is pending, and we expect it any day now, we'll have 6 properties that will be certified, 4 more than any post in the world, and one of them will be my residence. So I'm really proud about that. I applaud your efforts, Chris, and your leadership on that. And I just want to say that it's stories like this, it's people like this, working at this level who recognize the need for change, who take a risk, who invest their time and talent, who then share that knowledge and grow these projects. That inspires me. I'm not fixated as much as I was on the David Attenborough film that you sponsored that we saw. I mean, that is terrifying to me. It is real and that is happening and that is part of our story too. We need to address that. But I don't want to let that fear immobilize me. I don't want to be paralyzed by what I'm seeing. I want to be motivated by it. And that's what these stories have done for me. And so I thank you, Laura, and the British High Commission for co-hosting this event, for your team, for working with us for several weeks now to pull this together. I thank you also in the UK for hosting COP26, for showing global leadership to bring this world together. Minister, I thank you for your leadership, for your outspoken public advocacy on behalf of all of us. I know which government you work for. You got a flag there that shows it. But you're working for all of us, and we're grateful for your leadership. So I want to thank you again very much. No mai haere mai tēnā koutou tēnā koutou tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora.